Hello, my name is Jamie Brennan. I am an assistant professor in the animal science department, and I specialize primarily in livestock grazing behavior, rangeland science, and plant communities. So where we are right now is at the Cottonwood Field Station. We are in one of our summer pastures. What was initiated here was a stocking rate study that started back in 1942. And we initially split this area into 6 pastures and divided those into 3 different stocking rates. We have a light stocking rate, a moderate stocking rate, and a heavy stocking rate. Where we're at right now is in a pasture at the heavy stocking rate, so it's been stocked heavily, consistently for over 60 or 70 years. And so the result of that is we have this major shift in plant communities that has occurred. And so a lot of the rangelands in our moderate and light stocking rates still kind of have that typical western South Dakota plant communities where we have western wheatgrass, green needlegrass, kind of those midgrass species like that. When you walk around out here, you can see a lot more of our shortgrass species that are dominant. So things like buffalo grass and blue grama that are really prevalent out here as well. And so this study has been used to measure things like cattle weight gains, and so what kind of impact does these different management strategies have on cattle weight gains, performance in terms of average daily gain and production, kilograms per hectare. Yeah, we find with some of our heavy stocking rates, you tend to have a lower individual animal performance, so your average daily gains tend to be lower within these pastures compared to our light and moderate graze pastures. But you also tend to have a higher production in terms of kilograms per hectare, and that's just because there's more animals on the land per unit of land as well out there. Other projects have been laid on top of this. Currently there's some work looking at carbon flux between these different management strategies that we have out here. There's been hydrological studies that have been done out here as well to measure how these changes in plant communities affect the water cycle. And so kind of looking to the future, we're still continuing this project as is. We're kind of adding maybe some new technology in here as well. And so we're looking at, we recently acquired some livestock kind of smart water scales. So these are scales that you put right in front of the water tank, and they have a RFID tag reader in them. So whenever the animal comes up to drink, you're able to get a weight on that animal every single day. You could use that daily weight gain then to kind of project animal performance as you're moving through time, get real-time measurements on animal performance and production out there as well. And so we're kind of really excited as we're moving to the future and incorporating more precision technology into our operation out here. Some other things another pilot project that we're working on right now that's getting up and going at the end of the summer are real-time water tank monitoring systems. And so kind of the premise of this project was that one of the daily chores that just about all producers have to do is check animal water. Animals that don't have proper access to water, you could have all kinds of bad consequences, anything from loss of animal performance to mortality or animals escaping the pasture in search of more water. So we're currently working with the Ag Biosystems Engineering Department to put out monitors within all of our stock tanks that we have out here that could then relay water level and temperature data back to upload it back up into the cloud, and then you can get a real-time estimate on your phone or computer or what have you of your water status within your pastures. So where we are here is in one of our light grazed pastures. You kind of see the difference in the forage height that we have out here, and there's just a lot more western wheatgrass and midgrass production. This is actually the site out here. Is where we had the Cottonwood Wildfire that occurred back in the fall of 2016. And so this fire started on the interstate, spread fairly rapidly up here. This is actually kind of the northern reach of the fire. I think all told it burned about 50,000 acres when it was done. Burned right through the middle of our summer pastures as well. And at the time we had a project going where we were actually trying to simulate wildfire in this area. And so there's been a lot of research that's shown the benefits of wildfire on grasslands. So it benefits grassland nesting birds. There tends to have a benefit to plant communities as well, and forage for grazing animals. The problem that we have in this part of the country is a lot of producers tend to be fairly adverse to fire on their property. And so there's a lot of concerns over loss of forage that's out there, that you could potentially graze animals in times of drought. There's liability that's associated with that, loss of property, loss of fences as well. And so the premise of that project was to come up with ways in which we could see similar benefits from wildfire, only using animals to kind of induce a similar response. And so initially we had set up out here a project where we had what's called winter patch grazing. We'd basically take 20% of our pasture every year, stock it heavy with cows in the winter time when the forage is dormant, and they'd basically graze it down to stubble. Then come springtime and summer, you'd have this big bright green up of the vegetation within those areas, and you'd create this difference in terms of forage quality out there. You'd have these differences in vegetation structure, so you kind of have this short structure, which some grassland nesting birds like. You'd have some taller vegetation structure that some other different birds might like as well. And so we initially started that project and we got 1 year off the ground, and then the wildfire came and we actually had a real burn area out here to deal with. So I kind of turned lemons into lemonade and turned it into a project where we had our kind of simulated fire through grazing. We had a control area where we basically left alone, and then we had our burned area as well out here. And so kind of the nexus of those were all right up here on the hill where those three treatments met. We looked at things like soil moisture, differences in soil moisture between those treatments, looked at differences in terms of grassland nesting bird diversity and abundance between those, and looked at differences in terms of livestock grazing behavior as well. And so we used GPS collars with motion sensors that we could actually tell which kind of GPS locations are grazing locations. And what we found from that is the cattle really preferred those burned areas most of all. They're really attracted to that kind of bright green vegetation that was out there. Second after that, cattle preferred our kind of simulated burn area, kind of our winter patch graze areas. And then lastly, they preferred the control area as well. And so that's some of the results that we had from that study.